Welcome to the Nomad Futurist Podcast, where ideas shape the future and visionaries redefine what's possible. Join us as we dive deep into the evolution of technology, society, and human potential, spotlighting the voices driving change and reimagining our world. Connect with us and join us at media.nomadfuturist.org. The future is a story we write together. Let's kick it off. Here are your hosts, Phil and Nabeel. Hello. Welcome to Nomad Futurist. This is your co-host, Nabeel Mahmood, calling in from Scottsdale, Arizona.
This is your co-host, Phillip Koblence from Montclair, New Jersey.
And I am Casey Eldringhoff, calling in from Northern Virginia.
Well, Casey, as a matter of fact, apologize. Dr. Casey, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. This has actually been way overdue. You are one of the Nomad Futurist ambassadors, so thank you for everything that you continue to do in supporting, driving the message out to, the educational sector as well as people around you. Before we get started, could you share at a very high level, what do you do and who are you with?
I am currently a senior director in the facility operations department at QTS.
Brilliant. So before QTS, you have been with a couple of other organizations such as Amazon Web Services. But before we get into all of this, you started your career, if I remember it correctly, in the US Navy in the nuclear program and went to manage operations for some major data centers. What early experiences would you say that shaped, your journey to where you are today?
Oh, well, shoot. I would say that the first thing that shaped was just wanting to make my dad proud. I joined the Navy at 17. I had not heard that my dad was ever proud of me, and I knew that he was very pro-military. And so I thought, that's probably the thing I'm going to go do. And I originally just wanted to sign up and get a couple years in, get my GI Bill, get out, go to law school eventually. But I enjoyed being in the nuclear power program. I was told a couple things when I was going through that process, and I was told the nuclear power program was the best program the Navy had to offer. And I was also told that I couldn't do it because I was a woman.
No, you made a very interesting point. I mean, there were two pathways that just came forth, the nuclear power and law. How did you end up choosing one versus the other? I mean, I think the challenges were potentially about the same in either or fields.
Well, it really came down to who was going to pay for my education. So my parents were not going to pay for me to go to school and then go to law school. And the Navy offered the GI Bill, which was very attractive to 17-year-old me.
So how old were you, 17 or something, that you went into the Navy?
Yep.
And
turned 18 in boot camp.
Brilliant. Any military background, family members, or you're like, okay, this is it, I'm gonna go sort it out by myself?
So my dad had done 4 years in Vietnam era Air Force. I have two uncles who served in the Navy roughly about the same time. I have a brother who probably was the person that I followed after the hardest, who had wanted to be in the military and could not. And I wanted to make them all proud.
How many siblings do you have?
Yeah, go ahead.
How many siblings do you have?
I have an older brother and an older sister.
So, from, it sounds like from an early age that your dream was to be a lawyer. Like that was the little girl Casey. That's what you wanted to do.
Yes, and it's still kind of a dream of mine. Although when I started my doctorate,
there's still time.
Well, yeah, but when I started my doctorate, I promised my husband that I would not pursue any more education because 2 bachelor's, a master's degree, and then a doctorate was probably enough.
I don't know. Dr. Casey Esquire has a ring to it.
That totally does.
Were you interested? What was the driving force behind, being interested in the law?
Well, I was always told that I argue well, so might as well get paid for it.
Did you have an interest in technology growing up? Was that also something that was on the horizon?
No, it wasn't even on my radar. I did well in school, whether it was on the English history side or the math and science side. I did equally well, but it was never on my radar to go into any kind of STEM work. When I tell people I fell into it, I really just fell into it. And it's mostly because I was stubborn. They told me I couldn't do it because I was a girl, which
Right.
meant I'm going to do it.
I'm going to do it.
So
There's
I
that
did
lawyer.
it.
That lawyer. I see. I'm starting to see. I'm starting to see that little that lawyer come out. When you have a pathway into the Navy, so you sign up for the Navy, you can't just say I want to be in the nuclear program. Do you have to go through some testing or whatnot to go that route, or do they let you try it regardless?
No, so yeah, you have to go through testing. So everybody that joins the military or wants to join the military takes the ASVAB, which is a vocational aptitude test, and you have to score well in several specific areas and get a cumulative score that's above a certain point. I met those requirements, but this is I'm going to date myself. This is fall of 1993, and women were not allowed on combatant ships and therefore were not allowed in the nuclear power program. So this is like September, October. In November of 1993, President Clinton signed the executive order allowing women to go on combatant ships, which within a few months later allowed women to enter the nuclear power program. So I was one of the first women allowed back into the program because like before the 80s, probably beginning like early 80s and before, women were allowed in the program, but because they couldn't go out to sea, they were, always on shore. There was a lot of hurt feelings about seashore rotations for men, rightly so. And so they just closed it off for about 20 years. So when Clinton signed that executive order and it allowed women to go into the program, I was one of the first women
It's
to
amazing timing. I
get
mean, it's
signed up.
talk about shattering glass ceilings. I mean, if it wasn't like you date yourself with 1993, but if it wasn't that specific time,
Correct.
then what other alternative would there have been? But amazing. So
Law.
yeah, obvious, no
Yeah,
doubt, no
maybe
doubt, no
maybe I'd
doubt.
be a lawyer,
Right, right.
but then
Um,
maybe I wouldn't know my husband. So
and maybe we wouldn't know you. So you get into, they open it up to women. So what do you do? Do you like immediately say, now that this is opened, I want in? Because clearly you were on a different trajectory when you weren't allowed to do it. So how does that work?
so when I first signed up, I signed up into the delayed entry program, which is basically I still have to graduate high school. I'll go in later. Um, I had signed up as an advanced electronic technician. Basically, when they saw my scores on the ASVAB and then the NUC qualifying, well, I guess I hadn't taken the NUC qualifying exam. When I had taken the ASVAB, they gave me two options: this advanced electronic technician or cook. I didn't know how to cook. I didn't want to learn how to cook. So I took the other option that I thought was a little better. So they kind of pigeonholed me where they wanted me. And they knew right away that I had no desire to learn to cook. So I signed up for that. I was going to join in June, like actually enlist. And when it opened up, then they let me take the new qualifying test. I passed, and then we just redid the paperwork so that I could be a nuke electrician instead of an advanced electronic technician.
Was that still in the Navy then? Like, was that like around 96 time frame?
I joined in June of 94 is when I started my career.
Okay. So then you served till what, roughly about 2006?
2014. I did 20 years and 9 days.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for your service.
Thank
I mean,
you.
certainly longer than you had anticipated.
Correct.
Yeah.
When I first went into the recruiter's office, I was thinking like a 3 or 4 year tour, get a GI Bill, go off to college. Um, in either of the programs, the advanced electronic technician and also nuclear power, it's a 6 year commitment. So I did, after about 2 years, I re-enlisted. They offered some money. And so I thought, well, I got 6 years, I can re-enlist and that'll take me out to 8. I could do 2 extra years for this bucket of money. So I did that, and along the way, I really enjoyed what I was doing. It was a good career. It took care of my family well, and I stayed.
So
Right. So you
where
have a very interesting journey, right? I mean, so from a nuclear propulsion plant supervisor to a nuclear repair coordinator, back to a nuclear propulsion plant supervisor, and then you're in clinic manager. What does that mean?
Well, I
And how
mean,
does that move from what you were doing into the clinical part of the Navy?
oh, well, so Navy medical, you get what you pay for. And so at that point, I had gotten broken enough that I had to go on what they called limited duty, which means that you have to stay on shore and attend to your medical needs in the hope that you get better. So that time as a clinic manager was my recovery kind of duty station.
Gotcha. All right. Well, that's interesting. I mean, certainly probably some skills that are transferable. So talk to us about the transition from the Navy to getting to the data center sector. I mean, of course, it's complex, it's technical, but it's also commercial, right? I mean, you're leaving a very, very structured life to the chaos. How's that transition been? And what do you like or don't like about it? Or were there full of surprises?
I think the difficult part came in just feeling confident to sell myself and the skills that I had. Although I did well in my career and by a lot of people's standards, I was successful. That bit about having to take 2 years off and then not being able to deploy afterwards, and which stopped my promotion as well. Even though I got to retirement, I just kind of got in a spot where I couldn't deploy, couldn't promote. To me, I didn't feel successful. So during the transition, getting my resume together, being interviewing against people that I felt were more successful, like that was probably the biggest challenge for me. Also, going to work and figuring out what you have to wear each day when you're used to your whole adult life, somebody telling you what to wear. That's kind of just a little funny anecdote, but that is stressful. As far as the work, I left Navy nuclear power to go work adjacent to commercial nuclear power. So I went to work for the insurance company that insures all the commercial nuclear power plants across the US, Spain, and Belgium. So in that role, it was engineering evaluations, risk management, project management, a whole bunch of review of testing and maintenance standards. And that is all familiar. The size of the equipment's bigger, of course, but if you understand like how the equipment works, if you understand the philosophy behind how you maintain equipment, how you test equipment, drills that you need to run to make sure operational readiness, it's all the same. So that was very familiar, and I really enjoyed traveling out to the sites and working with the different on-site teams. So that was the best part of the job. I tell people I don't know a lot about insurance, but I do know how to operate safely a nuclear power plant.
You brought forth,
presumably that would give you pretty good insight into how to save the insurance company money.
Correct. Correct. I do know some stuff about that.
or how to negotiate, Phil.
Right.
So I think you bring actually a very interesting point about from moving from a uniform to thinking, what you got to wear every day. And it's actually something I was reading a few weeks ago, that all the big boys and girls around our space, they have a very tight closet, right? With Steve Jobs, the black mock neck, and Zuckerberg and Musk
Jensen
with his t-shirts.
Jensen Huang with his leather jacket. Doesn't
black
matter if
leather
it's 100
jacket.
degrees outside or 5 degrees outside. Same leather jacket.
Yeah, I feel we should actually implement in our gear as well.
I don't. It doesn't take me. It takes me very short amounts of time to do my hair. That's exactly why, because I want to be able to focus on the show. This is a complete choice, everyone.
Exactly. Going back to your education, so now you are fairly well experienced in nuclear. Then I see that you decided to go get psychology, and you just made a reference regarding the psychological element of getting into the civilian world, right? With the insurance business, right? So could you expand on that? Like, why did you end up picking up from a very, very technical field to psychology?
Okay. So it's not as good a story as what you think. So I actually got my psychology degree while I was in the military. And when I first started working on my bachelor's degree, basically online, remote, out to sea, I was still thinking that I'll probably get poli-sci, go law school. But my husband, I have been fairly certain that he has a calling to be a pastor. And I thought, how can I be? I just didn't know how, for me, who works a lot and is an overachiever, can be the best lawyer that I could possibly be and support my husband if he's pastoring a church. So then I realized that people come to me with their problems. And it's always been that way. And I thought, well, if they're going to come to me with their problems, I should probably be pretty good at responding. And the more I can learn about the brain and how people think, the better. And so I just went ahead and got my psychology degree. And then it's interesting because my husband says that I'm really good at convincing people to do certain things, and kind of I'm better arguing my point. And I just always try to use my superpower for good and not evil.
Well,
You know what's amazing about it, we've said this on the show many times, is like over the course of, this is my 30th year in our industry, and at this point, and certainly for the last 5, probably 10 years, the majority of what I feel like I'm doing is psychology and not like
Mhm,
some specific technical skill set. It's
mhm,
really just about how you communicate with people and how you kind of, some of it is inevitably lawyering because,
mhm.
you have to be persuasive, whether you're a lawyer or not. But ultimately you find, you're using these tricks that you don't necessarily even know that you're using, that end up being psychological, maybe manipulation, makes it sound like
I
you're doing it
cannot use
nefariously.
that word.
Right. But inevitably that what you're doing is you're trying to, cajole people into,
Mhm.
doing certain things. The idea that you would take that and simply go and get a psychology degree is crazy to me. It's not crazy in that like it makes total sense, but it's crazy in that you could even do it. Like how can you just pivot and focus and just get the degree? So is that, I mean, obviously you were good at school, but do you find, just going back to school and going through the rigmarole, it sounds like, you snap your fingers and you get a degree. Obviously there's a fairly significant amount of coursework and going back to that environment that you need to be able to do. And is that something that you think, kind of comes easier to you for some reason?
Well, I think that's kind of the beauty of Navy nukes. We are super trainable. We learn fast. We can learn complex stuff. Like I don't have a photographic memory. Some people do. I'm more of a paraphraser, so I'm not. There's probably people that learn faster than me, but at this point in my life, I think I could learn anything if I wanted to learn it. Obviously, there's things I don't want to learn, but I think that I could learn anything. It was super difficult. Not necessarily the course material, but the fact that I was doing it out to sea. When I was home, I had a husband, I had a young daughter. My mom was going through hospice. Like you add all these things, and it the content maybe not be difficult, but maybe the schedule is, or finding out the time, or getting the quiet to do the work. That's, to me, that's where the hard part is for studying, is just finding the time. But I didn't really think about it at the time. It just seemed like the right way to support my husband. And I thought, well, it's working at work also. I think that there is a psychology of the work we do. I think having done it, I think it has made me a better leader. It's made me better equipped to handle some of, being able to go alongside people as they go through life's tough challenges. To me, that's kind of an honor have that. So I also have a nuclear engineering technology bachelor's, which kind of just most of that was from credits related to the work that I did. And then I went to seminary and I got my Master of Divinity to be a hospital chaplain. Now that is my dream job, which is a weird job. People's reactions tell me that's a weird job to want to do, but it's the same thing, right? Like having that honor to come alongside people and show that like compassionate care when they're going through like sometimes some of the best things, but mostly some of the worst things and the hardest things where they just need somebody to help support them and hold them up so that they can get through it.
I knew there was more, Phil.
Right. There's no doubt. Of course, I mean, there's a lot of initials after her name, but the one
Yeah.
thing that I think if you put all of them together, that clearly comes through, is one that you wouldn't necessarily associate with our business, with a nuclear, with a military person, with a nuclear, Navy engineer, which is humanity. I mean, just there is so much humanity that comes through in what the driver of all of kind of your pursuits has been. Even the idea that you went back to school because you felt as though, that was the best way to support your husband, your dream job of being, supporting people in their biggest time of need is incredible, which leads me to the question, and you see a lot of people coming into our industry that are former Navy nukes. Obviously the first person to come to mind is Tony Grayson, just because, he's got so many followers on LinkedIn. He'll just accept anyone. But and he doesn't have a photographic memory, which I know because he wears those Ray-Ban recorder
Meta
glasses,
glasses,
which seems like cheating. But traditionally the argument for that has been just there's obviously an understanding of what it's like being in a critical work environment, and what could be more critical than being in a Navy nuclear submarine, where you're making life and death decisions every second of the day. So what is that transition like? How does that look? Coming from now, you're in the insurance business, and you're making this transition to a word that has not shown up in your career thus far, which is the word data center.
Yep.
So how does that obviously you're in the right place at the right time in Northern Virginia, but how does the data center world find Dr. Casey?
So I had a friend from the Navy who was working for AWS who contacted me out of the blue and said, "Hey, why don't you come do this facility management thing with me?" So at AWS, facility management, it's not just building management, but it's also the operations. So electrical, mechanical, HVAC, fire, life safety. And it's funny because I was thinking about leaving my company. I didn't think I was ready at the time. We were living in Southeast Pennsylvania. I didn't think that we were ready to move out of state. But my husband encouraged me. He's like, "See what happens." And about 2 months later, I was living in Virginia and we are putting our house up for sale. And that was January of 2020. We all know what happened in March, right? So trying to sell a house during COVID, I don't recommend it ever again.
So the only thing worse is buying a house during COVID.
Well,
Yeah.
so our daughter stayed in Pennsylvania because she was an adult at the time. So we moved to Virginia thinking we were going to be empty nesters. So the plan was to rent because we were going to scuba dive, travel, camp. We were going to do all the things we love to do without any of the homeowner responsibility. But then COVID happened. After we sold our house, we're sitting there staring at each other. And my husband said, I think I'm being called to be a foster parent. So then we became foster parents in the middle of COVID. So,
Oh my goodness, the humanity just continues.
Yeah, well, just trying to do the next right thing.
It's amazing. All right, so you get into this kind of data center world, which is, I would imagine, a very different world, certainly from what you were doing at the insurance company.
Well, I mean, it's more like what I did in the Navy as an operations supervisor. whether it's nuclear power, whether it's data centers, it's all the same, right? Except for splitting atoms. Obviously, we're not splitting atoms. We're not putting aircraft
Yet. This
carriers
is
through the ocean. But
this year you might start splitting atoms.
yeah, I hope. But I mean, a switchboard's a switchboard, a pump's a pump, air management is the same. You're just applying it differently. So it all feels extremely familiar. So I had kind of been out of that for a while. And I remember telling my husband, what if I'm not good at this anymore? Right. I'm used to like more of a desk job and writing reports and things like that. And he's like, no, no, it'll be fine. And like from the day I showed up, it felt very familiar. And it just seemed like, I mean, I'm sure there were some challenges, but in hindsight, it really just felt like I had never left. I don't know how to explain that, but it's all relatively the same type of work.
And that, so, we talked about the transition from the military to the desk job. Was there a similar type of, because of the familiarity of with like rolling up your arms and being operating again and not just, looking at it from the outside? Did that feel like what you were meant to do? Like once you got back in there, you're like, oh yeah, this is what I loved about, operations, or not
Um,
necessarily? You could say no.
Yeah, I
It's
do
fine.
love operations. My favorite thing about operations, though, is I like the operational frenzy. That's what I call it. Like, I like bringing order to chaos, or yeah, order to chaos, and solving technical problems. And at the insurance company, I did get to solve some technical problems, but it's more of like an engineering evaluation consulting type of
Right.
thing. And this, it's different in operations. Um, and I really enjoy that. Even though I say my dream job is not in STEM, like there's a part of me that if I leave STEM, it's still going to be missing, right? Like, because I do like solving the problems. I like to face the challenges, find new solutions. Um, it's always a matter of, trying to do more with less, right? As we look at budgets or people or, all the things that we normally talk about in businesses. And it's just trying to come up with good solutions that allow us to do all the things as best as we can, as efficiently as possible.
So at AWS, you led the mechanical, electrical, HVAC, fire, life safety. I mean, basically anything to do with mission critical, right? I mean,
Mhm.
it's a large um, organization with a global presence. So what's the mindset that you believe is required to manage reliability at that scale?
I think a lot of it has to do with asking yourself what's the next thing. So if you're talking about just accomplishing periodic maintenance, what's the next thing that's going to have a challenge or a roadblock? How do we get around that roadblock? Trying to get ahead of those types of problems so that it doesn't actually become the roadblock that you think it will be. And that's the same with parts and long lead times on equipment. The same with sometimes the way we do things, we could be more efficient. So where's the roadblock with our efficiency in a certain process? I think it's always asking what's next. What could we be doing better? Even if we're doing something really well, there's probably something we could be doing to make it even better. And just continuously asking those questions. Then there's the leadership piece. So asking, building strong relationships with the people that work for you, the people that are your peers, your partner teams, just building the relationship so that we're willing to help. I'm willing to help you. You're willing to help me. Let's roll up our sleeves together and accomplish whatever the big project is.
In the environment, sorry, in the environment where you're coming from an office environment and then you're right back into operations. You started
Mhm.
your military career, being one of the first women to be back into the nuclear program, and you go into a data center operations area where you're managing these teams of tradespeople, electricians and HVAC mechanics, presumably also vendors, like an entire ecosystem of people that are supporting you.
Mhm.
Did you see any of those same, kind of tensions with being, a female in a position of authority in a largely male-dominated kind of trades world, where they're like, "Oh, you wouldn't understand, lady. This is how these things are done."
Well, I'll tell you a funny story. So I was asked to speak at a conference, and I won't say which one, but I was asked to speak at a conference, and I was able to, just timing wise, my husband decided to join me, which made it a lot of fun. And so the night before the conference started, I did the check-in and I got my speaker badge that has, some ribbons on it. It's very obvious it's the speaker badge. And my husband gets a visitor badge that is so plain, and the vendors were setting up at the, for the vendor fair. And this one guy stopped us and he asked my husband what company he was with. And he said, "Oh, no, not me. My wife here, she works for Amazon." And the guy continued to have a conversation, laser focused on my husband. And the whole time my husband's like looking at me and making funny faces and like, look at this guy. And my husband kept trying to say, "My wife is the one that you'll want to talk to my wife." And he kept laser focused on my husband. So it happens. And to some degree, it probably will. I think it's gotten tons better than it, was in 1993. But I think we've come a long way. I think there's still work to do. I think there'll still always be people that are closed-minded and only see, like my husband, in that conversation. But I think what I like to say is the more that we can showcase women, for example, that there are women in the industry, that there are women leaders in the industry, I think the better it will be to attract female talent. And that's the same for any diversity group, right? If we show that they're there, then others will say, "Oh, look, they're doing it. I could probably do it too."
I mean, I think I just heard the teaser for this podcast. I think it's a perfect commercial.
Uh-oh.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, I think a part of the challenge is certainly social, and that breeds into the corporate culture, right? I mean, 1993 till now, it's not a lot of years. And it's good to hear that we're actually making good progress, but not at the pace that we need to. What practical advice would you give organizations? I mean, excluded, and not necessarily just cornering or putting one company or marking them up, but what would be your ask for the sector, the organizations, to build a stronger pipeline for diversity? What's our ask? I mean,
Yeah.
it's an amazing story, right? I mean, and it's not like it's that long ago. It's probably within the
Mhm.
last 6 months to a year, right? So we have not necessarily changed a lot. There's still parts of the country, parts of the world that are very, very, very old school. So how
Yeah.
do we go about addressing this at a global level where we talk about mutuality and equality, like everyone needs to be treated the same way?
Can I flip your question a little bit?
Absolutely.
So I did my doctoral dissertation on women's mentorship programs as a career retention tool for women in STEM. And I think that's probably the piece that we need. I think a lot of companies are doing a lot to recruit women, but I wonder, are a lot of companies doing a lot to retain women? And the reason that I say that is, as one of the first women in nuclear power, for example, as the years went by, I saw some really good women come into nuclear power, but a lot did not stay because they either didn't feel supported, they had a hard time juggling family and kids and those types of things. And some didn't enjoy being one of only a few, like it was super uncomfortable for them. And I think that had there been more attention to retention, what can we do to make these women feel supported because they're doing great things and we find them valuable and we want them to stay. I think that some of those women probably could have found a way to stay and probably wanted to stay. I still remain in touch with some of them and that they wish they could have. And so we can recruit and recruit and recruit, and we can have really great talent acquisition numbers. But if we're not doing the right things to keep them, did it really matter that we recruited them? That's kind of the viewpoint that I have. So I think it's probably twofold. We have to do recruitment, and then we also have to retain them. And I think that that's part of the message is again, if we can showcase that there's women already in the industry and they're doing great things and they're succeeding and they're moving up and they're becoming female leaders, then I think that's the piece that we need. Now, countries where it's a little tougher because of like cultural norms, that's probably a different story. But I think the principles kind of work, because even in those countries, if a woman sees that, oh, look, someone else is doing it, I can find a way that I can do it, whether I stay in country or I go somewhere else that's a little more receptive. Like there's probably the same type of behaviors that we need to do to work in that area.
Yeah, so retention by sharing stories and those journeys is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
How about like creating some sort of pathways and, sort of like a helpline?
Yeah.
Would that be something that would be helpful?
A helpline
like get a mentor.
Oh, yes. So, I mean, that was a whole topic of my dissertation is mentorship. So like, I think, so when I finished my doctorate, I rolled out a new mentorship program at AWS that was geared toward women finding women mentors. Now, like for me, I was a tomboy growing up, so I didn't really ever feel like early on that I needed a female mentor. Like it just wasn't a big deal to me. But there are a lot of women who it does benefit. At this point in my life, I do like having female mentors. I like one of each for different reasons, but I did at Amazon have a really fantastic female mentor who was like my champion. And mentorship is the way to go, because if a female, we're talking about women here, so, but this would apply to any diversity group, but if a female is going through a challenge, like say I have a newborn baby, I don't know how to juggle work and family, then going to somebody who's had that same experience provides a lot of support and comfort. If somebody came to me, I can say how I deployed when my daughter was 6 months old and I came back right before she was a year, like how I survived that. Or just even, how I go to work and work crazy hours like we do often in data centers and other STEM industries, and how I balance that with, a marriage. Those are questions that only somebody who's actually done those things could probably give the best advice.
No doubt. I mean, I think the idea of the kind of shared experience and the value of creating some environment in which people feel comfortable going to their peers that have been in similar circumstances is super important. Are there certain elements though that you think can be kind of structurally put into companies in order to help with the retention, particularly of a female workforce? Is there, like, if there were certain
Yeah.
I'm thinking specifically about in
Like,
technical roles, women that are struggling with the idea of whether having a family is going to be, something that's going to be, to the detriment of their job. So are there, as a company, you would want to make sure that you highlight that you're welcoming, those types of scenarios. So are there, certain strategies that companies can use to focus on, the retention of women and making sure that they're creating a welcoming atmosphere?
Oh, definitely. I think we've come a long way in just even parental leave. Like when I had my daughter, I got 6 weeks off. And the only reason I got 6 weeks off was because technically I was recovering from a medical condition. I mean,
Right.
it's really the way the Navy looked at it. I know the Navy even has increased the amount of time, and then most jobs out in the civilian sector, we're looking at like time off of like 12 weeks or greater, depending upon the company. And even the husbands are getting paid parental leave, which wasn't a thing when I had my daughter. So I think we've come a long way in those regards. Benefits and different company policies, absolutely. I think also a lot of companies have started like employee resource groups. And those have made a difference too, because it gets people together, whether they're in the same department or the same location. It gets people that have similar shared interests, gets them together so that they can talk, so they can network, they can meet people with shared interests, kind of socially shared interests, and then they can network and learn about people that are doing other jobs that may interest them. Those types of I guess social groups or resource groups are super beneficial too.
To go into like leadership, what's a leadership lesson you have learned the hard way, but you're grateful for it?
I would say the biggest one that I learned when I learned leadership. So when I transitioned from kind of the tactical operator to a little bit more of the strategic supervisor. I was in the military. I was probably about 26 years old. And there's one type of military leader that was taught, and it was like the authoritative leader, right? Which has a place in a military organization as far as command and control, right? Because we could be, taking people to war and you need them to follow the orders. But there wasn't any focus on Casey should be the best leader that Casey can be. And she should take the pieces of her that she values and mold that into her leadership style. So for me, it really ends up being like a servant leader. I was not the best leader if I was only trying to be authoritative, because it did not feel natural. But if I could blend that with the needs of the Navy and being authoritative when I needed to, but also a servant leader, then you get the best leader that Casey could be. And I think that's something that I try to convey to a lot of leaders is like, I could teach you about leadership, but you have to figure out the type of leader that you're going to be best at. I don't want a whole bunch of people trying to be a leader like I am, because it's just not going to work out well, because we're not all wired the same.
So just looking into the sector now, we've got a significant human capital deficit at the pace that we're growing. I mean, there's so much demand that we can't really keep up with it. And as a foundation, and you being a part of it, we've been trying to address that by providing resources such as education, scholarships, and mentorship and others. If you were advising a young person today who wants to build a career at this intersection of what's yet to really happen, I mean, we haven't really broken ice yet, what steps would you recommend? And would you also suggest or recommend a particular domain that they use that as an opportunity to leapfrog from?
Oh, I would say getting involved with organizations, like, this is not a shameless plug for Nomad Futurist, but getting involved with organizations like Nomad Futurist who
We'll take it.
I know, right? Who are teaching, who are inspiring, who's going out and talking to, school age children, right? Like, getting involved in some sort of volunteerism that's related to it, I think is super important, because even like as you're going through school, say you have the money to pay for college and you leave high school and you go to college, it takes time. And then once you get out of college, you haven't really built your resume, but an easy way to do it is through volunteerism and just finding organizations that support the mission and you can get some experience from and meet some good people that, can be helpful and can speak wisdom into you. I think that's kind of the first big piece. Of course, internships while you're in school is another piece, because then you can get your foot in the door, especially if you like the company that you intern for and you both think you're a good fit. And then I think the third piece, which is really not related to your question, but I think is really super important, is the do it scared mentality. Like, you don't have to know all the things before you go work for a company or before you go into an industry. But if you have the interest and the drive, then you could still be really successful. I mean, that's what I learned by going into the nuclear power program. Like, I didn't know anything. And when I showed up and they started spitting calculations and theories and all this stuff, I thought, what did I sign up for? I don't want to do this. But 30 years later, it's been a really great career, and I've enjoyed it.
Well, I mean, just the diversity in itself of the education and experiences just speaks volumes, right? Don't be afraid to learn. And what's the worst that can happen? You're going to learn something new.
Yeah. Or even if you find that you don't like it, you'll probably find a part of it that you like that will take you down a different course. And it still may be within the industry. There's so many different roles, whether it's operations or engineering, or, we have a whole team of accountants and procurement specialists. And I mean, there's so much.
I think, Phil, the tagline is try it.
Right. I'm reminded of that Yogi Berra. Yogi Berra was also from Montclair. So we have a lot of like street signs for him. And Yogi Berra's famous phrase was, when you get to a fork in the road, take it. In large part because if you go to where Yogi Berra's house was, there is a fork in the road and they both lead to the same place. So I'm not sure that it was because he was like a remarkable philosopher, or he just was describing how he got home. But the same is true. I mean, experiences are so valuable just for what they are, not where you think they may lead you. And I think, if the only thing Nomad Futurists can do is provide a platform to share your story and people like you, although there is only one Dr. Casey, with the rest of the world, then I think we are doing a tremendous service to this world. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Casey. This was really great. I mean, learned things that I didn't know about you, and thank you again for everything that you're doing and contributing for the Nomad Futurists Foundation as well. Really appreciate you.
Well, thank you for having me. It was an honor.
And I always knew that you were psychoanalyzing me. I didn't realize how, but now I know because you have a degree.
She knows more about you, Phil, than you know about yourself.
Right. What's my PIN number?
Now you're going to be wondering the rest of the day, what did she convince me to do?
Right, exactly. Why am I wearing a wig? I don't know. What is happening? All right. Thank you so much, Casey. This is amazing.
Thank you for joining us on the Nomad Futurist Podcast. Remember, technology, markets, and challenges will continue to evolve, but those who adapt and prepare are the ones who will thrive. Embrace the change, stay curious, and let's build a future worth moving towards. The journey has just begun, and we are glad you are here with us. Visit us anytime at media.nomadfuturist.org to stay connected and be a part of the movement. Until next time, keep exploring.